Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about cooperation. And it's not always easy to cooperate with people, right? Sometimes it's hard enough to even cooperate maybe with your siblings or with your parents, people that you love, never mind people that you disagree with. Think about people in your community that you might have different opinions about. It's even harder to cooperate with them. Well, I'm going to talk today about a village who, in the Middle East, that exemplifies cooperation. And it's cooperation between two groups of people that have had tons of trouble getting along for many years. And this is the conflict between Israel and Palestine. So first, I'm just going to give you a little bit of history about that. I imagine you have a little bit of knowledge about it, but I'm just going to sort of skim the surface about that conflict. It was in 165 BCE, before the Common Era, that the last Jewish state of biblical times is established following a revolt in Judea. So we're talking about before the Common Era, right? So this is when the Jewish people were established in the area that is now Palestine. In 63 BCE, Roman conquerors placed Judea under the Roman province of Palestine. And then it was about 50 years later, the Romans suppressed a revolt. And for many centuries after this, following centuries, there was dispersion and banishment and the selling as slaves of the Jewish people from this area. So they dispersed to other areas or were banished. In 638, Arab Muslims conquered this area. They conquered the Byzantine Empire, which replaced the Roman rule. So it was the Romans came and got rid of the Jews, and then it was the Byzantine Empire, and then the Arab Muslims conquered them. And so since for over 1,000 years, the area was pretty much dominated by the Arab Muslims. Well, looking at more present times, in 1918, Britain occupies the region, and at the end of World War I. And this ended more than 1,200 years of Muslim rule in the region. Escaping anti-Semitism in Europe and Russia, a massive movement of Jews to what is then known as British mandated Palestine is already underway. So 1,200 years of Muslim rule, 1918, Jewish people start coming to the area. Well, in just 4 years later, in 1922, a British census showed that Jewish people comprised nearly 11% of what was still a mostly Arab population of over 700,000 people. And over the next 15 years, another 300,000 Jews arrived in the region. So then 1947, British hands over control of this area to the United Nations. So conflicts were widespread in which the Arabs believed that they're the natives of this region, while the Jewish people, they came after, they believed that they're returning to their native homeland from times even before that. So they both the Arabs and the Jewish people felt a connection to this place and believed that they were the rightful people to be there. So with political, financial, and military support from Britain and the United States, Jewish forces conducted the first forced removal of Palestinians from their homes and from their neighborhoods in 1947. The next year, Israel is established as the first Jewish state in nearly 2,000 years. Well, the Palestinians mark this day of the beginning of this Jewish state as the catastrophe, they call it. And many armies invaded the newly formed Israel. So since then, attacks have continued on both sides. And news reports just focus on the difference between these two groups of people. You have the Arab Muslims and you have the Jewish people, and there's just this huge conflict there that goes back thousands of years. And as I said, the news reports focus on the differences between these two groups, but it's essential for creating, in order to create a region of mutual respect and dignity, it's essential to remember that there are common ground between these two groups of people. So that's just a really brief overview of a really, really complicated situation. But the long and short of it is that, here are these two groups that both have connection to this place and believe they're the rightful people that belong in this place and are fighting over the land and have for many thousands of years. So they don't always get along very well. But now I'm going to tell you a story. And I mean, close your eyes if you want. Use your imaginations and imagine a village that is home to 55 families and a village that has a waiting list of more than 300 families that want to become a part of this community. Parents choose to raise their children in this village because they want to break down barriers of fear and mistrust while building bridges of respect and cooperation. Imagine that this village has hosted more than 45,000 visitors over the last 30 years. It has so many visitors from all over the world that take part in seminars and projects that examine how the world came to be so fractured and about how we might heal and find new directions for living together. And it turns out this community, this village, it's real. It's a real place. And the village is called Nev Shalom, or Wahat al-Salam, which in English is known as the Oasis of Peace. The name itself is an act of cooperation because the residents of this village are 50% Jewish and 50% Palestinian, all with Israeli citizenship. Oasis of Peace in Hebrew is Nev Shalom, and in Arabic is Wahat al-Salam. So it's called both. And it's located in Israel. And despite the continued conflicts between Israel and Palestine, the residents remain committed to choosing respect over fear and cooperation over isolation and opposition. The village began in 1978, 2 years after I was born, when the first family of the village joined Father Bruno Hussar, who had been living on the land for 6 years. He was born a Jew in Egypt and later converted to Catholicism. He has dedicated much of his life to establishing peace between Arabs and Jewish people. His vision included a community where the primary focus is educating children. And there's a quote from him: "For years there have been academies in the various countries where the art of war has been taught. We wanted to found a school for peace too is an art." So the primary school located in the Oasis of Peace offers bilingual and multicultural classes for students from kindergarten through 7th grade. The environment is one of mutual respect in which the students learn about each other's heritage, their beliefs, each other's language, each other's cultural narrative in ways that offers legitimacy to the narrative without needing to agree with it. So you might not have the same belief, but at least you're understanding it, where the other person is coming from, or the same beliefs, or the same way of doing things, or the same way of living your life. Most of the school's more than 200 students come from the surrounding towns, and the first graduates of the school are now in their 20s, because it's been around for a little while now. So one graduate says, "I think it's an achievement. When you see people from outside the village sending their kids to a school that is not in their area, it means the message of the school is really working." So another educational center, the School for Peace, extends the learning far beyond the boundaries of just that small village. Over 45,000 kids and adults have taken part in workshops that provide communication tools as well as opportunities for dialogue in effort to understand their own roles and responsibilities in this conflict. So in memory of Father Hussar, the one who started this village, he died in 1996. They developed the Pluralistic Spiritual Center to provide a space for study and reflection while drawing inspiration from spiritual traditions from around the world. Another graduate of the school eventually attended an all-Jewish high school, and his classmates would ask him things like, "What, you're living with Arabs? Aren't you afraid they're going to throw stones at you?" And the graduate said, what are you talking about? They were my best friends. And he realized that his classmates didn't meet people from the other side. They were Jewish and they hadn't met Palestinians. So in this village, learning the art of peace requires more than just meeting people from the other side. But day after day, the residents of the Oasis of Peace prove that Arabs and Jewish people can live side by side very happily. So it's a pretty cool place. If you want to check out their website, it is oasisofpeace.org, and I will post that link with the video. I'll put it in the YouTube video description, and I'll put the link in the Facebook comments when I put it in Facebook as well. If you want to check it out, there's some photos. If you want to see photos of the community and of the school, and it's a pretty cool place. So people not immediately involved with the situation over there might look at it very differently from those who live there, right? So you guys, you might have heard of the conflict. Now I've told you a little bit more about it, but you're going to see it very differently than those who are actually experiencing, right? So think about what are your feelings about it? What does it make you think about? And you may not agree with, your sibling that's sitting with you while you're watching this. I'm looking for here. So think about the story. What did you find most interesting about this village and what's going on there? And what I want you to think about as we finish up this, and as you get up away from finish the video and get up and go do other things, you're probably going to go off swimming or hiking and won't be thinking about this. But I do want you to think about, why do you think it's possible for the Arabs and Jewish people to live in peace like this in this village when there's so much conflict between these two groups in general? But in this village, they're able to live in peace. So why do you think that is? Is cooperation, since it's about cooperation, one of the skills you think that these residents need? Respect for religious differences, understanding where these other people are coming from. So just I want you to give some thought to that. So that is it for today's lesson. I will see you next week. Stay safe and be kind.